Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Now today we're going to be taking a look at this article you sent over, the biggest trend of 2024, and what to expect in 2025. It's really quite a fascinating read, covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, it does. It's a really comprehensive analysis, and I think it does a great job of capturing just how fast things are changing these days. I mean, it's like the world's been put on fast forward.
Totally. And it doesn't shy away from the big issues either. Right out of the gate, it dives into the whole global power struggle thing,
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
especially between the US and China.
Right.
There's a lot of talk about decoupling, which basically means they're trying to become less reliant on each other,
Exactly.
particularly when it comes to key industries like
Which
semiconductors.
is huge.
It's
Yeah.
almost like a high-stakes game of risk,
Yeah.
but with real-world consequences.
And the ripple effects are being felt everywhere. It's really interesting to see how these global tensions are influencing domestic policies all around the world. Countries are starting to prioritize their own backyard, so to speak.
You mean like focusing on their own internal issues?
Exactly. Things like strengthening healthcare systems,
Right.
investing more in education and infrastructure, really shoring up their own foundations.
It's almost like a tug-of-war between global forces and local concerns.
Definitely. And all of this is happening against a backdrop of some pretty serious economic uncertainty. I mean, we've all seen the headlines about inflation,
Oh, yeah?
supply chain disruptions,
Absolutely.
energy prices going through the roof. It's a lot to handle. And the article even hints that central banks are considering some pretty unconventional monetary policies, you know?
Like what?
Well, they mention things like negative interest rates, just to try and keep things afloat. It's pretty wild
I
stuff.
mean, it sounds like they're walking a tightrope, trying to tame inflation without sending us all into a full-blown recession.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act for sure.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is how all this economic turmoil is actually accelerating the shift towards renewable energy.
Oh.
The article suggests that investing in green technologies is no longer just seen as like an environmentally responsible thing to do.
Yeah.
It's actually becoming an economic
It's
imperative.
like necessity is the mother of invention kind of thing.
Exactly. Countries and companies are realizing that investing in renewable energy is not just good for the planet, but it's also a smart, long-term economic strategy.
It's like hitting two birds with one stone.
Exactly.
Speaking of innovation, this article also paints a pretty vivid picture of how AI is becoming a part of everything.
Oh, yeah. AI is everywhere these days.
But it also raises some concerns about, the ethical implications of it all.
Which is a huge conversation that we need to be having. I mean, things like algorithmic bias,
Right.
job displacement, the potential for misuse. It's important that we develop responsible guidelines for AI development and deployment.
Yeah, it's like we need some kind of traffic laws for the AI superhighway.
Exactly. And the EU is actually leading the charge on this with their AI Act. Yeah, it's a pretty landmark piece of legislation. It aims to create a framework for trustworthy and ethical AI. So, things like making sure algorithms are transparent and free from bias.
Especially in sensitive areas like hiring or loan applications.
Exactly. We have to ensure that these powerful technologies are used fairly and responsibly.
And it's not just AI, right? Data privacy and cybersecurity are also huge concerns these days.
Oh, absolutely. It's
Yep.
like the other side of the coin.
The article talks about how governments are implementing stricter data protection laws
Right.
and putting more resources into protecting critical infrastructure like power grids and financial networks.
Yeah, the stakes are higher than ever before. I mean, the article even mentions the growing threat of state-sponsored cyber attacks.
Wow, so it's like a digital arms race?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a whole new battleground.
It's mind-boggling when you think about just how much the world is changing right before our eyes. And one of the biggest areas impacted by all of this is the future of work. With robots and automation taking over more and more tasks, it makes you wonder what kind of jobs will even exist in the future.
That's a question a lot of people are asking these days.
Right. It's a little unnerving.
It is. But the key takeaway from the article is that we need to embrace adaptability and lifelong learning. The jobs of tomorrow will require a different skill set than the jobs of today. So it's crucial that we stay ahead of the curve and constantly be upskilling ourselves.
So it's less about what you know and more about how quickly you can learn new things.
Exactly. It's about being agile and adaptable, being able to pivot and embrace new challenges.
It's like we're all becoming lifelong students in a way.
In a sense, yeah. We have to be constantly evolving and expanding our knowledge base if we want to stay relevant in this rapidly changing world. Picking up where we left off, one thing that really struck me about this article was how these global trends are playing out differently in different parts of the world. It's not like a one-size-fits-all
It's
situation.
more like a patchwork quilt, almost.
Exactly.
Each region kind of doing its own thing.
Right.
Like the article highlights how the European Union is taking a very proactive approach to AI regulation, for example,
Yeah, they're really ahead of the curve on that one.
whereas other areas are still trying to figure out their strategy.
Absolutely.
So what is it about the EU's approach that's so groundbreaking?
Well, their AI Act is really considered a landmark piece of legislation.
Uh-huh.
It aims to create this comprehensive framework for trustworthy and ethical AI.
I see.
So they actually categorize AI systems based on their risk level,
Yeah,
and then they set very specific requirements for those high-risk systems, like the ones used in healthcare or law enforcement.
that makes sense.
It's a pretty stark contrast to the U.S. approach, which has been much more hands-off.
More like industry self-regulation.
Exactly, let the market sort it out kind of thing.
So it's like the EU is setting the gold standard,
In a lot of ways, yeah.
and everyone else is watching to see how it plays out.
Right.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
and it's not just AI where we're seeing these regional differences, right? The article also talks about how different countries are tackling climate change in their own unique ways.
Oh, absolutely. Like
Oh.
Denmark, for instance. They're investing heavily in wind energy,
Makes sense.
whereas Canada is focusing more on carbon capture technologies.
That's for
It all comes down to leveraging their own strengths and resources.
Right. It's like each country bringing its own expertise to the table.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of potential for collaboration and knowledge sharing, He can learn a lot from each other's successes and failures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The article also uses this phrase, just transition, when talking about climate action. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, that's a really important concept.
Oh.
Essentially, it means making sure that the shift to a greener economy is equitable and inclusive. We don't want to leave anyone behind in this transition.
So it's about making sure that workers in industries that are being phased out,
Right. Like fossil fuels, for example.
they have access to training and support to find new jobs.
Exactly. It's about creating pathways for those workers to transition into these emerging green sectors.
So everyone has a seat on the sustainability train, so to speak.
Exactly. We're all in this together.
On a more positive note, the article also talks about how technology is revolutionizing healthcare.
Oh, yeah, there are some incredible advancements happening.
Things like personalized medicine
Right, where treatments are tailored to your specific genetic makeup,
and telemedicine.
which is making healthcare much more accessible to people in remote areas.
It's amazing to think about the possibilities.
It really is. And the article also delves into AI-powered diagnostics.
Like what?
Well, imagine algorithms that can analyze medical images and detect diseases like cancer long before they're even visible to the human eye.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It feels like we're on the verge of a healthcare revolution.
Absolutely.
Shifting gears back to the economic landscape for a moment, I was particularly intrigued by the article's discussion of global trade and supply chains.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It suggests that we're moving away from that hyper-globalized model we've seen in recent decades.
The one where everything's made in China.
Right, toward a more regionalized approach.
Exactly.
What's driving that shift?
Well, a lot of factors, actually. Geopolitical tensions, for one, rising transportation costs,
Right,
and this growing desire for greater resilience and self-sufficiency.
makes sense.
Companies are starting to realize that it's risky to put all their eggs in one basket, so to speak.
So they're diversifying their supply chains.
Exactly. Spreading things out a bit.
And focusing more on regional partnerships.
Right. It's about creating more balance and stability in the global economy.
It makes you wonder how this will impact things like consumer prices and job markets.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on.
For sure.
The article suggests that we might see some higher prices in the short term,
Okay.
but it could also lead to new opportunities for domestic manufacturing and innovation in the long run.
So it's like a trade-off.
In a way, yeah. Short-term pain for long-term gain, potentially.
We'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out.
Exactly.
And speaking of challenges, we can't forget about the issue of social inequality.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge one.
The article really drives home the point that this rapid pace of technological advancement and economic change is widening the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
It's a critical issue that we need to address.
Absolutely.
The article emphasizes the need for policies that promote inclusive growth,
Right.
provide access to education and training opportunities,
Ah.
and ensure that the benefits of progress are shared more equitably.
It's about creating a future where everyone has a chance to thrive.
Exactly.
Fair.
Regardless of their background or circumstances.
And that brings us back to the individual level. In the final part of our deep dive, let's explore how these global trends are likely to impact you, the listener, and your own professional journey. Okay, so as we shift our focus from the global picture to something a little more personal, one thing that keeps coming up in this article is the importance of adaptability. It's like, in this era of constant change, the ability to learn new skills is more important than ever.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, the only constant is change, has taken on a whole new meaning.
Totally.
Their article even suggests that the jobs of the future will require a totally different mix of skills than what we see today. Things like technical skills, obviously,
Right.
but also creative thinking, strong communication abilities.
That's like a whole new skill set.
Exactly.
And speaking of learning, the article also talks about how education systems are trying to keep up with all of this change.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It mentions things like online learning platforms, micro-credentials, personalized learning paths.
Which is a far cry from the traditional model of sitting in a classroom.
It really is. It seems like the focus is shifting away from just collecting degrees
Right.
and more towards actually demonstrating what you can do, like proving your skills and competencies, regardless of where or how you learn them.
Exactly. It's not just about having a piece of paper anymore. It's about showing what you can actually bring to the table.
So it's less about what you know and more about what you can do with what you know.
That's a great way to put it.
And it's not just about technical skills either, right? The article also talks a lot about the importance of creativity and innovation.
Yeah, those are going to be essential skills in the future, especially as automation takes over more routine tasks.
Because those are the things that robots can't replicate. The
Exactly.
uniquely human abilities to think outside the box, come up with new ideas,
Yeah,
solve problems in unconventional ways.
that's what will set us apart.
Right, the human element.
Absolutely.
And speaking of human qualities, the article also touches upon something called social intelligence,
And emotional intelligence.
right, which are becoming increasingly important as we navigate an increasingly complex and interconnected world.
Exactly. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
The ability to understand and manage your own emotions, build strong relationships, work effectively with others, those are skills that are going to be in high demand.
Especially as more and more work becomes collaborative.
Right.
It's not just about being smart.
It's about being able to connect with others on a human level.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like the future of work will require a balance of hard skills and soft skills.
Technical expertise and human connection.
Right.
You need both to really thrive.
And, as we wrap up our deep dive into this article, the biggest trend of 2024 and what to expect in 2025. One overarching theme that really stands out is this idea that the future is not something that just happens to us. It's something we actively shape.
Right. It's not predetermined.
We have agency.
Exactly. The article makes a really powerful call to action, urging all of us individuals, businesses, policymakers to work together to create a future that's both sustainable and equitable.
It's about realizing that we all have a role to play in shaping the world we want to live in.
And that's a really empowering message.
It really is. We've covered a lot of ground today. Global shifts, economic uncertainties, the rise of AI, the changing nature of work, the urgency of climate action.
It's a lot to process.
It is. But hopefully this deep dive has given you some food for thought, sparked your curiosity, maybe even inspired you to take action in some way.
Whether it's learning a new skill, getting involved in your community, advocating for a cause you believe in, or even just staying informed and having thoughtful conversations with others.
Every step we take, no matter how small, can contribute to shaping a better future.
That's the beauty of it.
We've all got a part to play.
We do.
So thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery. And until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep shaping the world you want to see.
Well said.